podcast. We are joined now on the Friday edition of the program as we head into Labor Day weekend by our good friend Julie Kelly. And Julie, let me just say this right off the top. You have gotten attacked a lot. I get tagged in some of your attacks. Not a surprise that Buck and I come in for our fair share of attacks, but I want all of our audience to know this. Nobody has worked harder on behalf of the Jan 6 charges, the political attacks from the legal process than you. And I want to personally say thank you for all that you have done, and thank you for all the battles that you have been fighting. Even when you are getting targeted, to me, that's just a sign that you're over the right target. So I appreciate you. I just want to say that right off the top.
Thank you. That means so much. You guys have just been phenomenal in bringing my work to your audience, but I consider you both friends, and that really means a lot because you know how it feels, Buck does, when you're under attack. It's not fun, especially when they're going after your family, but that means a lot to me, so thank you so much.
All right, so let's dive into speaking of being under attack, nobody is more under attack than Donald Trump has been over the past several years, and you've been covering it aggressively. So let's start here. Jack Smith, you were the first person I saw who shared this, did what you had been suggesting he might well do for some time. He filed a superseding indictment. That means he basically, for people out there, tore up his old indictment, which had been severely impacted by the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential privilege, which you have talked about a lot. We talked about it for years, what was coming there. What is your take on the newest superseding indictment? And sort of play chess with us here. What is Jack Smith even attempting in your mind?
Well, he had to file this to conform with the Supreme Court guidance in Trump versus U.S., which I know we discussed, and that was the opinion published July 1, that essentially established three different buckets of immunity for a sitting president and his conduct at the time. Of course, Donald Trump is the former president now. But Jack Smith's J6 indictment deals with activities when Donald Trump was still president. What the Supreme Court said is any conduct that clearly falls under the constitutional or presidential purview of core functions, of course, that's immune from criminal prosecution. Then they said, some of the outer perimeter acts they used as an example, Donald Trump's conversations with Mike Pence leading up to January 6th, those are presumably immune. And then, of course, if it's personal or political, private conduct, Donald Trump went out and killed a bunch of people or any sitting president, of course it wouldn't be immune from prosecution. So Jack Smith had to revisit his original indictment that was filed a year ago, 4 charges. These are the same 4 charges. He did not change those. But what he had to do, Clay, he cut 9 pages from the original indictment because the Supreme Court specifically said that Donald Trump's interactions with his own Department of Justice officials were indeed protected. That was immunized conduct and could not be liable to criminal prosecution. So not only did he drop 9 pages, gutted anything that referenced DOJ from the original indictment, he dropped Jeffrey Clark, one of the acting associate attorney generals, a man who has been absolutely targeted, attempted to destroy him, both the federal government and Fani Willis, had to drop him as an unindicted co-conspirator. So he's totally exonerated in what he did. But this is still an extremely weak case, even though he attempted to conform to Supreme Court guidance on immunity. What he didn't do, Clay, which really blew me away, he did not deal with the obstruction of an official proceeding guidance from the Supreme Court. I know we've talked about that as well, the 1512C2. That represents 2 of the 4 counts. And the Supreme Court specifically said, and this is the most common J6 felony, specifically said, you have to demonstrate that the defendant destroyed evidence, that they impaired some sort of record or document, not that you just interrupted the government meeting. Jack Smith completely ignored the Supreme Court guidance in Fisher and left those 2 counts in, never demonstrating that Donald Trump directly impaired any sort of record or document. So he's hanging on by a thread. There's a hearing next week, Clay, on September 5th, Thursday. I will be in Washington. I will cover this hearing to see what the next steps are after the superseding indictment was filed.
So when we think about time, and I know a huge part of our discussion with you over the years has always been, Julie, about time because the election is a little over 60 days away now. Basically, this case, even if Judge Chutkan wanted to move in rapid fashion, it doesn't seem like DC is going to have any substantial impact in terms of being able to restrict Trump in a substantial way between now and November. Is it fair to say that, even with Jack Smith's actions?
That's absolutely 100% accurate, Clay. There's no way, no matter how much, and we saw this with Judge Tanya Chutkan, the Obama appointee presiding over this case. We saw her desperation to get this to trial, setting an impossible 7-month schedule between indictment and trial. She wanted this to go to trial last March. But of course, the immunity issue, this is an unprecedented case. It had to work through the appellate court and then the Supreme Court. When it was kicked back to her, she filed a really quick schedule trying to get a status report in this hearing. And Jack Smith actually had to say, whoa, no, we're not ready yet. We have to go through the indictment, compare it to the Supreme Court ruling. We'll get back to you, which is what they did this week. There is absolutely zero chance this goes to trial, certainly before the election. Not this year, not next year, and certainly if Donald Trump wins, this is a dead letter anyway. But in the meantime, he gets to inject January 6th back in the headlines, Clay. That is the purpose of the superseding indictment. He knows that there will be no meaningful legal activity on this for the rest of the year, but they get to again remind voters and tie Donald Trump to January 6th, so-called insurrection. And that's the really shady, really inexcusable part of all of this.
Okay, New York City. I was surprised, I don't know if you were, that Alvin Bragg's team actually came out and said, yeah, we don't oppose the request from Donald Trump to postpone sentencing to see how this case, that's the New York City felony case, might have been implicated by the presidential privilege ruling as well. I kind of found that stunning. Now it's entirely on Judge Merchan. Right now they have a sentencing date. You correct me if I'm wrong, Julie. I believe September 18th is when that
Correct.
Next court hearing would be. And it's now entirely on Merchan's shoulders exclusively for him to be rendering a punishment. Were you surprised by Bragg's filing saying, hey, we don't oppose this? And what do you think Merchan does now?
Well, they really can't because the conviction deals with Donald's activity that Donald Trump conducted or did when he was president. Mm-hmm. So unlike the documents case in Florida, that was all post-presidential. But these are alleged, offenses that happened when Donald Trump was president. And so Alvin Bragg really had no choice but to say, we need to figure out what elements in the indictment and the conviction deal with potentially immunized conduct, and I will be posting this afternoon, Clay, for your listeners, the new motion that Donald Trump's lawyers filed yesterday, asking the federal court in New York to move this from the state court to the federal court so they could hash out these federal immunity issues. So we'll see what the federal court says there. But 2 days before the sentencing, Clay, Judge Merchan says that he's going to issue an order to determine what elements in the conviction would be protected by immunity and what won't. My expectation is that Juan Merchan will come back single-handedly say that all of the testimony, all of the evidence in that case relates to personal or political private activity, and it's not covered by Trump v. U.S., the Supreme Court opinion, and then 2 days later try to hold some sort of sentencing hearing. I think he is perhaps the most unhinged judge out of all of them, and that's saying a lot.
Okay,
but I think
so this
that
is
is
fascinating.
what he'll do.
Judge Merchan, again, 16th, he has to make that decision, September 16th, and the 18th. What do you think the chances are that he tries to put Trump in prison?
I honestly do think it's slim because of the nature of the convictions. It would be unusual to sentence him to any jail time. Even if he does, usually then you report to prison 2 to 3 months later. I can't see any situation where he would ask for him to be immediately taken into custody. But you know what, Clay? What's going on in that courtroom, it is so unbelievable. Here you have a judge whose daughter is raking in millions of dollars every month from Democrats And I reported on this, she's hauled in $13 million between January 1 of this year and June 30th while the proceedings were going on in her father's courtroom. She picked up new clients, and like Gretchen Whitmer and others, known Trump haters who have paid her all this money while these proceedings are going on. What's even more astonishing is Juan Merchan still has a gag order on Donald Trump preventing him from saying anything publicly about his daughter, Lauren Merchan, in her business dealings with Democrats. So I guess I would have to say I really can't put anything past this judge at this point. His contempt and his daughter's contempt and, of course, profiting off of what's happening to Donald Trump, putting him in jail would only be good for the Merchan family business.
No doubt, but also, can you imagine, Julie, the rending of garments and histrionics that we would see if on September 18th, Judge Merchan says, okay, guilty, punishment is a $200,000 fine. Like, I just, for me, I just look at this and I say, Democrats have been built up to expect a pound of flesh here, right? That is what they have been taught associated with these Trump criminal trials. If the only thing that happens is Merchan institutes some form of like house, some form of probation and a sentence of a fine after all this, I just think Democrats are going to lose their minds.
They will, and I think that's a really good point, and probably would justify his sentencing Trump to, a few months in prison. And he can do that without any risk because he knows it's never going to happen. Because if the case is not completely vacated, the convictions based on the Supreme Court ruling and all of the appeals, therefore, he knows that Donald Trump, with the Secret Service considerations, everything else, will never go to jail. But to your point, he could get away with saying that. He can satisfy this bloodlust on the left and Democratic Party to see Donald Trump behind bars. His daughter gets a big win then, rakes in more millions of dollars. So it's kind of a win-win for him either way.
Julie, I appreciate I appreciate all your work. Do you have any big Labor Day plans? Are you doing anything fun?
My daughter is in town with her friend, so my husband and I were going to be hanging out with them, go downtown Chicago for a few days, and then back to work Tuesday. I will be in Washington for the hearing next Thursday on this case, but also more J6 hearings, really important ones about 1512 C2 on Wednesday. So I'll keep you posted about that as well.
For sure. We appreciate all the work. Have a great Labor Day with your family, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You too, Clay. Thanks so much.
That's Julie Kelly. Look, a lot of us don't think twice about our credit cards. We have them, we use them, we pay the bill. But what if I told you about a credit card that wants to give you back some of your money through conservative causes? That's things that you actually care about. Coin does it. Backed by Visa, gives you 1% back on every dollar you spend, but also supports conservative causes with every purchase you make. Coin, spelled with a G, COIGN. I have it in my wallet. Both Buck and I carry the card everywhere. My wife has it, and she spends a lot with it. But anyway, the point is we have Coin credit cards, and we get hooked up in a big way. And one of the things they're doing right now is supporting an organization that helps disabled vets called Rescue 22. You can learn more about them at coin.com. Sign up now. America's conservative credit card. It's got the Constitution on it. Really, legitimately, red credit card with the Constitution on it. That's coin.com. Be sure to select Clay and Buck in the How Did You Hear About Us section on the website, coign.com. Terms apply. Go to coin.com/disclosures for full details.